I had one of my subscribers ask me a comment this week, and I'm going to put his name in the description box. I can't remember all the channel names of people that have subscribed to me and send comments even quite regularly, and I didn't want to get it wrong. But he said that I had pretty good looking soil, and I should do a video on how I got it to look that way. Well, when we started, the flowers were there. And from there to about right here was about 50 feet. And from the side to side was about 30, and that was about 1,500 square feet. And we've just said we had a 1,500 square feet garden for years when people ask. After a while, the ends got out because we just kept plowing and turning around. And now it's about 33 feet, and that's 50 up to there to about here. But then we had a compost pile in here, and we incorporated that into the garden. And we built another compost pile here probably 3 years ago. I think in 2012, when I first started putting videos up in March, we had a compost pile here and I was removing it to plant stuff. But anyway, we had this one, and now I'm in the process of removing this one and putting it on my garden. And I'm going to incorporate this in the garden. So now we're really looking at close to 2,200 square feet. The problem down here in this county is it has a lot of clay. It has a lot of lots that will not perk because of all the clay. And the clay is from surface, but there's clay under the surface. But in a lot of places the clay is 4 feet down, and then in other places it's 21 feet down. But I did a video a long time ago, and it's stored on an external hard drive, so I might not be able to retrieve it. This is what we started with. And it rained 3/4 of an inch last night, folks. You see this? Now I weigh 250 pounds, and I'm a pretty strong guy for 72 years old. Alright. I just put 250 pounds on that shovel, and it went down about a ½ inch. I did it again. That's how far I could dig with a shovel. Now you can't plant anything in that. It is lifeless, nothing. So we had to do something about that. So this ground was growing some weeds and grass. And one day I saw the power guys up on the highway clearing the right-of-ways. They hire companies to do that. So I just stopped because it doesn't hurt anything to ask. And I said, what do you do with all those chips that you grind up? They had a big chipper and 2 big trucks, and they were hauling it to the landfill for all I know. And he said, why? And I said, well, I got a garden right up the road here, and I sure would like you to put it on my garden. And so he got in my truck, and I drove him over here to show him where it was. Now at the time, you got a picture that the daylilies weren't there, but the flowers were there. But the irises were died back because it was, I think, late in the season. Anyway, he could back across that lot, and he wanted to start dumping them out there by where that grass line is. And I said, don't worry, it's so hard you can't sink away. Well, he didn't trust it, so he raised his truck up, and they had a board on it, and he could adjust the flow, and he backed up to the center of this garden. And then he raised the whole back end of it up, and it all fell out in a big giant pile. And then he went and brought me another one. Oh, it was about an hour or two later, and he dumped it in, and it was a huge pile. This is a double tandem axle dump truck. And so he had 2 loads in here, and I said, no, I think that'll be enough. Well, I spreaded it around as best I could and got it fairly level on the top, and I had an old lawnmower with an old pair of blades on it, and I ran around and around in circles until I shot that out the side chute on the mower deck until it spread out pretty much all over this garden. I'm not kidding you, it took hours. And then we let it set for 2 years. And then we came down here and started plowing it in. Now the main pile was right about there, and it was a dome thing. And if you actually put this camera on the ground, you could see that the ends are still lower than the middle because it was just so much mass. And so it took 2 years for all that to break down, and then we fertilized it and limed it after we had plowed it many times. This whole garden, I mean many times. It's probably 6-7 tankfuls of gas in my walk behind plow. And then we made some rows and we planted a garden, and it turned out pretty good. And the next thing is you take a lot out of a garden. Now, we had compost piles at my home. You've seen it on my earlier videos. And at the end of, well, at the beginning of that planting season, we bought trash cans full of our compost down here. It's almost 50 miles, folks, each way. And dumped them in the rows. Scattered them in the rows like it was fertilizer. And plowed that in and had our first garden. Then we pulled everything out. And I think we had a small compost pile, but we took a lot of that to the landfill. And then that year, I got up all the leaves at my house and brought them down here in that little wooden trailer you might have seen, and covered this whole garden with leaves, probably 4, 5, 6 inches. And then the next year, we turned all those in, and we put down fertilizer and lime, and you had to put the lime down to offset all the acid in those leaves to sweeten the soil. And we brought our own compost down here for several years until we had a compost pile big enough to compost it from here. And now you can do this on a small scale. If you got a big garden, you know, acre, you can't do what I'm doing. I mean, you know, it's no way. But you can do this with a few tomato plants or 39. And a few peppers and all the rest of it. Now I put this compost down today because every year you take out. And when you take out, you got to put some back in. We've covered this garden every year for about 11 years, probably about 9 years since we had all the chipped up matter on it. And every year we covered it with leaves. It protects the soil in the wintertime. It doesn't get hard. It doesn't revert back to that hard spot there. It keeps the weeds down. And then in the springtime, when we get ready to plow, most of that at the bottom of the leaf pile is all composted down. And we turn it all in about 4 weeks or more before we want to plant. And then we turn it in again with fertilizer and lime. And then we turn it in again, and then we plant it. And it looks like you saw in the video a little bit back. Take out, and like I've told people on the video, it's like a bank account. You can't keep taking out money or you'll be broke. So you have to put some back every year. Now, we had a compost pile that was 30 feet long and about 6 feet wide, and that has gone on this garden over the last 4 years or so. Now we have another one that's about 5 feet wide and was 30 feet long, and we're putting it on the garden. Now I put it between the rows, and see right there we put some within 18 inches of all those plants. Within 18 inches of all those plants. Now you see I haven't put any down there. I haven't put any down on this end. And that area is finer because we drove the lawnmower with the baggers across that loose stuff and picked it up. But that's got a lot of wiregrass in it, so I can't do that because I can't introduce wiregrass in this garden, which would be horrible. And this is what it should look like when you put compost the whole time, and it still hasn't been raked. And now we'll bring it all the way out here to keep down on these weeds and to have a weed barrier. And that's why I plow around the garden for a weed barrier. So today, what I'm doing is putting this compost on the ground. Now that compost will allow me to walk on those plants that are buried away from the stake out in the row without damaging them, because it'll cushion the weight of my footprints. It holds moisture. It keeps down weeds. It saves us on watering because the soil is not exposed to the sun, and its evaporation is what takes most of your water off. So I'm doing this forkful by forkful. And we had used a little last year, and we started about right here. And see all that wiregrass? That's why we got to dig all that wiregrass out.